Thank you for being here today. My name is Adrian Perez, and I'll be discussing a topic of growing importance: the ecological and economic impacts of invasive fish species in South Florida. This presentation is based on my research, which analyzes the causes, consequences, and potential solutions to this pressing issue. Throughout, I've incorporated data visuals and case studies to help illustrate just how complex and urgent the problem has become. South Florida's freshwater ecosystems, such as the Everglades, wetlands, and canal systems, are under increasing threat from non native fish species. They have been introduced intentionally or accidentally through human activities like aquarium dumping, aquaculture escapes, and even sanctioned sport fish stocking. Once established, these species are hard to control and they disrupt fragile ecological networks by preying on native organisms, degrading habitat quality, and altering food webs. Beyond their environmental effects, they also impact economic resources tied to tourism, recreation, and infrastructure. Now let's take a closer look at how these invasive fish got here in the first place. The first major pathway is the release of aquarium fish. When hobbyists can no longer care for their exotic pets, they sometimes release them into local canals or ponds, believing they are doing the humane thing. But unfortunately, these fish often thrive and reproduce rapidly in warm Florida waters. A second pathway is aquaculture. Fish raised on farms for food or pet trade can escape during floods or through inadequate containment. And finally, there are cases where fish are deliberately released for sport fishing, but often without full understanding of the long-term consequences. Each of these pathways complicates efforts at prevention and regulation. Among the dozen of non-native fish species introduced to Florida, a few stand out as especially problematic. First, the spotted tilapia. It is a highly aggressive species known to dominate canal habitats. Next, the Mayan cichlid. It is another fish species which is a prolific invader, especially in South Florida's wetlands. Then there's the walking catfish, named for its ability to move across land and between bodies of water. And finally, the armored catfish. It is infamous for its burrowing behavior, which causes erosion and damages levees. Each of these species poses unique and significant threats to both the environment and the economy. Ecologically, invasive fish can dramatically alter native ecosystems. They compete with local fish for food and breeding space, and many are more aggressive or reproduce more quickly. Their presence often leads to a simplification of food webs where specialist native species are replaced by generalist invaders. Some even directly prey on native fish and amphibians. The long-term effect is a loss of biodiversity as well as a shift in the ecological function of freshwater systems. When native species disappear, entire aquatic communities can collapse or become permanently altered. Now let's take a deeper dive into one of the species, that being the spotted tilapia. This fish is known for its aggressive territorial behavior and its ability to rapidly colonize new areas. It constructs large nests that disrupt bottom sediments, which increases water turbidity. This in turn harms aquatic plants and reduces spawning success for other species of fish. Tilapia also consume large amounts of plant material, contributing to habitat degradation, and their presence significantly lowers the abundance and diversity of native species like sunfish, which are very important both ecologically and recreationally. Next, the walking catfish and armored catfish bring different but equally harmful problems. Walking catfish are capable of surviving in low oxygen environments and can even cross short distances across land, allowing them to invade isolated wetlands. They feed on eggs and juveniles of native fish and amphibians, reducing reproductive success. Armored catfish, on the other hand, damage physical infrastructure by burrowing into canal banks, causing them to collapse. These behaviors not only affect aquatic life but also increase erosion and require expensive repairs. Here, we can see a visual representation of the estimated relative abundance of these invasive fish. Tilapia and Mayan cichlids are the most prevalent, followed by the walking and armored catfish. These estimates are based on field surveys and monitoring studies conducted in canal systems across South Florida. The dominance of these species reflects both their adaptability and the lack of effective natural predators. This chart underscores why management efforts need to prioritize these particular fish. The ecological damage we've discussed also translates into substantial economic losses. Florida's recreational fishing industry generates about $9 billion annually. However, as native sport fish like largemouth bass and bluegill are displaced or decline in numbers, anglers become less satisfied. This leads to reduced participation and lower economic returns for bait shops, fishing guides, tourism companies, and local businesses that rely on sport fishing. Infrastructure is another major area of concern. Armored catfish are notorious for burrowing into canals and canal walls and levees, destabilizing them and increasing the risk of flooding or structural failure. Maintenance crews are forced to spend millions on repairs, often repeatedly. As well, ecotourism is especially in places like the Everglades are also very vulnerable. Tourists come to see pristine biodiverse habitats, and when the invasive fish take over, they reduce the aesthetic and ecological value of these systems, leading to fewer visitors and less revenue for parks and communities that surround the parks as well. This chart presents a breakdown of the annual economic costs associated with invasive fish. The largest chunk comes from the loss of revenue from recreational fishing. Infrastructure damage is the second largest cost, and finally, there is a hit to ecotourism. These figures are conservative estimates, though, and they don't account for all the indirect and long-term consequences, such as declining water quality or the cost of attempted eradication of the species. To combat some of these challenges, one strategy Florida has adopted is biological control, specifically the introduction of the peacock bass. The peacock bass is native to South America and was first introduced in the 1980s to help reduce the population of invasive cichlids, particularly in urban canals. The peacock bass is a visually striking and popular sport fish which helped build public support for its introduction. It also has a limited temperature of tolerance, which helps restrict its range to southern Florida and lowers the risk of spreading statewide. In this line chart, we observe trends over a 30-year period comparing the rise of peacock bass with the decline in tilapia populations. While correlation does not prove causation as we have learned in science, the data suggests that peacock bass may have contributed to tilapia control in some canals. This relationship shows potential for targeted, ecologically sensitive biocontrol strategies, but it also highlights the need for further research and long-term monitoring. Despite its promise, biocontrol isn't without risk. Introducing a non-native predator can create new problems. Peacock bass may consume or compete with native fish, including juveniles of economically important species like the largemouth bass. Once established, these fish are very difficult to remove, and this makes it essential to weigh out short-term benefits against possible long-term consequences and to apply biocontrol cautiously and selectively. Given the complexity of the problem, we need integrated management strategies. These should include multiple approaches like public education to discourage the release of aquarium fish, habitat restoration to support native fish species, continued use of biocontrol in targeted, well-studied contexts, enhanced monitoring and early detection programs, and collaboration amongst agencies, scientists, and local communities. No single method will solve this issue, but a coordinated science-based strategy gives us the best chance to help reduce the issue at hand. To summarize, invasive fish have transformed South Florida's freshwater ecosystems and pose serious economic challenges. Species like tilapia, walking catfish, and armored catfish are driving biodiversity loss, habitat degradation, and infrastructure damage. Biocontrol, including the use of peacock bass, has shown some promise but must be handled with care. The path forward lies in an integrated long-term management approach that includes prevention, monitoring, and education. Only through sustained effort can we protect Florida's aquatic heritage. So again, thank you all for your attention. I hope this presentation has provided a clear picture of the challenges and opportunities in managing invasive fish in South Florida, and I'd be happy to have any questions that you may have. Thank you again. Hope you have a beautiful day.